When might you start on red and stop on green? When you're eating a watermelon, of course. I'm sensing groaning. I don't know why. I thought that one was all right. My name is Ben Hales, and I'm with Transform My Poker. And today I'm going to talk to you about the stop and go maneuver. It's a specific poker move for short stacked play. And by the end of this video, you'll know all about it. Let's get cracking. First up, let's define what the stop and go is. And so for those of you who don't know what it is, it's when you're sat pre-flop and you decide to call a raise. You've got a short stack, and instead of shoving back all in, you just call, and you know that post-flop, on the flop, you're going to move all in 99% of the time. You're going to be moving all in directly on the flop. So really what you're doing is staggering your 3-bet shove across the pre-flop and flop streets. Might seem a bit crazy, but there's method in the madness. It is a move that is most suited to tournament play just because of the fact that you're generally going to be really, really short stacks. I mean, you're deep in the mire, probably inside the push-fold zone. So there's confirmation of that normally you're going to be sat with between 6 and 12 big blinds. So that is what the stop and go is. Let's now talk about why we might consider making this peculiar move when surely 3-bet shoving looks more natural. And there's a very, very specific goal in mind here, and that is, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before, fold equity. Fold equity is the amount of money we make by making our opponents fold. And in this type of situation, fold equity is gold. It's the holy grail. Showdown equity plays much less of a role in the profitability of moves when we're down at very, very short stack depths. If we can make someone fold and we've only got a few big blinds, we could be doubling up without having to face a showdown. And that is extremely desirable. So at 6 to 12 big blinds, villains will fold more post-flop than they will pre-flop. So let's imagine someone raises with 10 big blinds and I shove back all in. That player ought to be calling with all of his hand range, because pre-flop, he has the right pot odds to call. Once the flop comes down, if we just call his raise and then go all in, the situation's very different for him. Some of the time, he's going to prefer to fold. There is a flip side, of course. He gets to choose to fold out when the flop looks bad for him. But overall, he's going to fold more often, and this is where the money is. So the reason we're making this play instead of 3-bet shoving is because we can make our villain fold more at the flop stage than we can with a pre-flop shove. So if we get up to 14, 15 big blinds effective stack, then the 3-bet shove pre-flop generates enough fold equity. But at 6 to 12, we ought to have no fold equity, and we can generate at least some if we use the stop and go. So overall, because of this discrepancy in fold equity, the 3-bet shove may yield less overall profit than the stop and go. Next item on the agenda is to discuss what hands we should choose to do this with. And this is important. You're not going to be doing the stop and go with any 2 cards. You need to be selective. 2 high cards are great, because what can happen is you get a flop come down, blank, blank, blank. If you've got 2 high cards, they're quite often active when your opponent calls, which he will do quite often. So you end up facing a showdown. At least if you've got two high cards, then they're likely to be active. You may have 20-24% showdown equity with those two live cards. If you make this play with pocket threes, it doesn't work as well, which is why the second point here is pocket pairs are not the best hands to choose to do this with. Much prefer the pre-flop re-raise shove. Okay, other relevant factors. This works best against opponents who are raising with a wide number of hands. If you've got a tight raiser, then they're never going to give that hand up. If they're holding a big ace or a pocket pair, they're not giving the hand up. But if your opponent stares down at an ace-4 suited, a king-jack, or a pocket threes, he may decide he just can't call and lays the hand down. So you're looking for opponents who are playing wider ranges. You don't want them with super tight ranges because they're never, ever going to fold post-flop or pre-flop. So the second factor is you want to be choosing spots where the raisers would never fold pre-flop. If you think you've got equity by 3-bet shoving pre-flop, take it. Sometimes you'll find opponents do fold when they shouldn't pre-flop. So if you think there's a chance your opponent will fold pre-flop to your 3-bet, go for it. It makes most sense to continue with that strategy. And finally, the raiser's bet size matters. If the raiser raises to the minimum 2 big blinds, then you may be able to utilize the stop and go at stack sizes as low as 6, 7, 8 big blinds. You just call and then launch your chips in as a slight overbet to the pot. That's ideal. But if your opponent raises 4 times the big blind pre-flop, then you're going to need a stack depth that's a lot bigger. So maybe 12 big blinds is then optimal for utilizing the stop and go. So you need to get a feel for this. You want to be betting something around pot size or a bit more than the pot size post flop. And so it's not just your stack size that matters, but it's also the raiser's raise size. Good. Now I want to end this video with a small example of an effective stop and go in action. Okay, so this is a sit and go tournament where there's a lot of pressure on staying alive. Okay, that's important in tournament play. You've got to think about the value of your chips. You don't want to be busting out. You've got to value your tournament life, and that's where the fold equity comes into really important play here. We've got 8 big blinds left, and if we can do any small thing to try and stay alive, then we should do that. And that's where this stop and go comes into play here. So we're holding ace jack on the big blind. The loose button raises 2.5 big blinds. We could 3-bet shove. That would be a decent play. But the stop and go is more effective. What we do is we call. Pot size is 5.5 big blinds, 5.5 big blinds left. So we've achieved that pot size bet remaining. We shove all in at any flop. And the raiser sometimes will fold. If he calls, fine. But he'll sometimes fold. And this is where we manage to win the pot without seeing a showdown. And it's absolute gold. So the stop and go, very, very useful for tournament players looking to minimize variance and achieve a little bit extra fold equity where it seems like there should be none. So now you know everything you need to know about the stop and go move. And you've got a great watermelon joke to tell your mates. Do the Facebook likes down there for me, please, and send in your comments and questions. I'll look forward to answering them. My name's Ben Hales with Transform My Poker. Thanks very much for listening.